Hi, this is Archita. What I have here are a few of my Angry Bird cake toppers. Well, these are the ones that survived my son's birthday cake. The rest he has just eaten up because, oh, what can I say, he loves this fondant stuff. But I've made these cake toppers and I recently asked my friends on my Facebook page if they'd like to see me make one of these. And I got 2 whole votes, both of which were for the red Angry Bird. So I'm going to show you how to make that today. And here are the other ones that I had made: the white bird, a pig, the yellow bird, and this is his or her Royal Highness. I don't know whether this is a king or queen. And finally, here is the replica of a Beyblade. Now this is also made out of fondant, and then I've painted it. So you can use gum paste as well, a little bit of a gum paste in your fondant when you're making these cake toppers. It would make it harder, but I prefer to leave it all fondant because that's easier to eat. So while it does dry out quite a bit, it still is easy to eat. So if you were to bite into it, there wouldn't be any problem eating it. All right, so to get started, we are going to use fondant to make this, the Angry Bird cake topper. And typically you can buy white fondant. This is what it would look like in a much bigger package, of course, but you can buy white fondant. Now if you're making the red Angry Bird, for instance, or if you're making something black, I do recommend that you buy the ready-made package, and it comes in a package like this. So it's the Wilton's version. And specifically for red and black, I prefer to use the ready-made pre-colored version because you get the vivid shade that you're looking for. Of course, if you prefer, you can still buy the white fondant and color it using Wilton's gel. If you want to make the red Angry Bird, you have to use the No Taste shade. It's called No Taste red. So that's what you need to use. And of course, there's a black if you're trying to color it black. So for now, we are going to start off with the red Angry Bird, and we'll actually start off with its eyes. So you get your fondant, and you always start by kneading it or squishing it around a little bit. And the reason you're doing that is just to get it kind of malleable so you can work with it better. If you don't knead it out and you start working with it directly from the package, you'll see a whole bunch of cracks, and that's not fun. So I'm going to roll this out, and of course you can use your rolling pin to do that, fondant rolling pin, but for now I'm just going to use this little tool. Alrighty, so I want to leave it a little thick. Yeah, that's good. And the reason I want to leave it a little thick, but I'll show you in just a bit. Okay, now to cut out the eyes, what I'm going to actually use is an icing tip. And this is the number 12 Wilton icing tip. I'm going to use the top edge, and that's because I don't really have anything that would give me the exact size I'm looking for. But that's the reason I left it a little thick. I'm going to cut it out smaller than I need it to be, but then I'll squish it out so it's a larger shape. I'll show you what I mean. So that's the first eye, and then the other. Now with this piece of fondant that's left over, you can actually use this to be the nostrils of a fondant piggy. But for now, I'm just going to squish it back and put it back under this little bowl here. I am keeping all of my fondant covered under this bowl because fondant tends to dry out very quickly. If it does dry out while you're working with it, you can use a little vegetable shortening to get it back, get it going again. But best thing is to first of all keep it covered. All right, let's just give this a little bit of a, I'm just shaping it out to be circular. And now I'm going to use the top of one of my Wilton color gels. I did wipe it off so it's nice and clean. But I'm just going to kind of place it in the center and then apply even pressure downwards so that I have an eye. And then just peel it off. And I'm using my handy dandy X-Acto knife, nothing fancy here. It's just the X-Acto knife that you would find in a craft store. But I do use this only for my fondant work. All right, so this is more or less of a circle. Now we can make it more perfect later. For now, we'll just let this dry. The reason we need to make these first and let them dry is that if you were to try to outline the eyes now, it's still a little tacky and it's going to get all bent out of shape. So we let the air do its thing. Meanwhile, we'll get started on the bird itself. So again, now this is the pre-colored fondant that I mentioned. It's nice and red. Just squish it and get it to be malleable. And now So as I'm kneading this now into with a circular motion, I'm kind of pressing into the little round shape so that there are no seams on this, and just make it a bit of a spherical shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. Once they see the Angry Birds, they're just so thrilled, they don't really care. But then if I get any details wrong, my son, he's a bit of an Angry Bird purist. He does get upset. So all right, so now just set it down, give it a tiny little push, just a tad bit of a push. And what that does is create a bit of a base here. So before it dries, if you have this base, then you're going to control how the Angry Bird sits on your cake finally. And I'm going to just put it aside now and let it dry again. But I'm going to let it dry on a piece of sponge so that the shape, it doesn't change its shape. Okay, so we have the bird, we have the eyes. Let's now go ahead and make the beak. So once again, we squish the fondant. And if you notice, I just kind of made it taper to the top. And now I'm just going to push it against the surface I'm working on. I hope that's not hard to see because it's an orange beak on an orange surface. And the way I got this color was I used Wilton's gel color again. I used the orange color. You have to use just a very little bit because the gel colors are concentrated and a little goes a long way. So you use a little toothpick and get the amount of color you need into your white fondant, and then you get the color you want. All right, so what I have here is really a cone, and I like to again just kind of push it against the surface I'm working on, and that's to give me a nice clean edge here. And it's a nice pretty circle, but if it wasn't, then I would just adjust it like that. Okay. So this doesn't look like much of the Angry Bird beak, but it will by the time we are done. All right, so I'm going to use my X-Acto knife again and just go down the center and start cutting, but I won't cut all the way through to the bottom, around 3/4, and that's it. So I'm also going to use it to kind of split open the beak, and then I'll use a tool like this, or improvise, use whatever you have in your kitchen. But essentially what I'm doing is to create a hollow, and that will give the impression of the mouth being open. I'm also kind of pressing into the beak here, so there, and that again gives me a nice hollow shape. So sometimes I use the back as well to just get in there and get it nice and hollow, and at all points in time just make sure that the beak is still staying nice and pointed. That looks good for now. You can open it out more if you want him to be yelling like really nasty stuff. Okay, and there are times when I just even will bend the beak so it's like that, and then he looks like he's saying even more crazy stuff. For now I think we leave him like this. Okay, so that's the beak. And again, just rework the bottom, the base, to make sure it's a nice circle. I do see a little bit of a hole inside, so it's not going to show when it's all said and done, but anyway. Okay, that's the beak. So that's done. That's going to sit on the side as well. The next thing we are going to do is to cut out the tail of the Angry Bird, and I do believe it has a black tail. If I get this wrong, my son's going to be very upset, but I do believe it's a black tail. All right, once again, knead, and then just roll it out. Oops, I had an ugly seam there. I don't want that. It's just easier to work with if you don't have a seam. So these are all just freehand. Again, the Angry Bird police is not going to come after us if the shapes are not exactly right. Just on our homemade stuff, right? Okay. So I'm just going to leave it a little thick. This is how thick I've left it. But what I'm going to do now is cut it like that, and then like that. So it's like a fan shape, and I'm just going to press the bottom to get a nice flat edge, and again on the sides as well to get a nice clean edge. Okay, now you see I've got this, I don't know, this fan shaped quadrilateral thingy, but I'm just going to cut little notches here, so just little triangles, and then one more here. Okay, so this is what I'm left with. Now, as you can see, the edges are quite pointed, so we'll just use the tips of our finger, and they're kind of rounded now. That's it. Okay. And some of the other birds have a crest as well on their head that's black, or whichever color, but this is what you'd essentially do to make the crest as well, the exact same method. And at this point I've just realized that I don't have enough red to make the crest for my angry bird, so let me just look for my red. There we go. So we won't really need all that much, but get a little bit out and roll it around, no seams, and then just start tapering it. So that's simple enough, right? That's one, and the other one I'll make a little bit smaller, and again just knead and then taper it. And then we'll just join the two together. So while the fondant is still tacky, it'll stick to itself pretty easily. So we'll do that. And I'm just going to give it a flat bottom so it's easier for us to insert it into the head.